The heavy wooden door creaked as you pushed it open, announcing your arrival to everyone inside. No doorbells, no knocking, just that familiar groan of old hinges that said someone was home. You learned to move quietly if you wanted to sneak, but those doors had other plans. Saturday mornings meant one thing: cartoons and a giant bowl of sugary cereal. You'd pour until the milk nearly overflowed, crunch through every colorful piece, and drink the sweet leftover milk straight from the bowl. Mom pretended not to notice the sticky rings on the coffee table. The corner barbershop had a spinning pole and chairs that pumped up and down like magic. Hot towels steamed your face while the old barber told the same stories to every customer. The floor was covered in hair clippings, and everything smelled like aftershave and talcum powder. You'd spread a blanket under the big oak tree and call it your house. 4 corners, invisible walls, and suddenly you had your own kingdom. Acorns became money, leaves became plates, and your little sister had to knock before entering your leafy mansion. The ice cream truck's melody drifted through the neighborhood like a Pied Piper's song. You'd drop whatever you were doing, frantically search couch cushions for quarters, and race barefoot down the street. The driver knew every kid's order by heart. Penny candy lined the glass jars at Murphy's 5 and dime, Swedish fish, Mary Jane's, and Bit-O honey that stuck to your teeth for hours. You'd point at each jar, counting your coins, making each penny stretch as far as possible. The paper bag crinkled with possibilities. Your bedroom wallpaper told stories, cowboys and horses, or maybe pink roses that you'd trace with your finger while lying in bed. Every chip and bubble was familiar. You knew exactly where the seam didn't quite match, and somehow that made it more yours. The town library was a cathedral of hushed whispers and stamped due dates. Books smelled like vanilla and old paper. The librarian wore wire-rimmed glasses and could recommend the perfect adventure just by looking at you. Late fees were a quarter and worth every penny. Campfires meant ghost stories that made you pull your sleeping bag closer. Someone always had a flashlight held under their chin, casting spooky shadows. The marshmallows burned on the outside, stayed cold in the middle, and you ate them anyway because fire made everything taste better. Your favorite fishing spot was a secret only you and Grandpa knew. Early morning mist rising off the water, the plop of your bobber breaking the surface. You caught mostly minnows, but Grandpa called them trophy fish. The quiet was better than any conversation. The general store had everything under one sagging roof. Nails, penny candy, work boots, and cold sodas in glass bottles. The wooden floors creaked with every step, and the owner knew 3 generations of your family by name. Credit was a handshake and a promise. Fresh bread cooling on the kitchen windowsill meant Mom had been baking since dawn. The crust crackled when you tore off a piece, still warm enough to melt butter instantly. You'd eat half a loaf before dinner, and nobody complained because it was just that good. The old rope swing hung from the highest branch, worn smooth by countless hands. You'd grab tight, run fast, and launch yourself over the creek below. Sometimes you made it to the other side. Sometimes you didn't. Either way, you climbed back up for another try. Your dog followed you everywhere without a leash, stopping when you stopped, running when you ran. He knew the neighborhood better than the mailman, and came home when the streetlights flickered on. No tags, no papers, just pure loyalty and muddy paws. The soda fountain at Woolworth's had chrome stools that spun and a counter you could barely see over. The soda jerk wore a paper hat and knew how to make a perfect chocolate malt. The metal cup was so cold it made your hands numb, but you held on anyway. Your favorite hiding spot was behind the old barn, where wildflowers grew tall and nobody ever looked. You'd sit in the tall grass with a book, feeling invisible and important at the same time. The world was busy, but this corner belonged to you. Rain meant puddles deep enough to sail paper boats. You'd fold them from newspaper, launch them in the gutter, and race alongside as they navigated toward the storm drain. Most didn't make it, but the few that did were champions worthy of cheering. The town square had a gazebo where the band played every Sunday after church. You'd spread a quilt on the grass, unpack fried chicken from a wicker basket, and listen to music that made grown-ups smile and tap their feet. The world felt smaller then, and somehow bigger too. Your bicycle had playing cards, clothes, pinned to the spokes, turning every ride into a motorcycle adventure. The cards flapped and snapped with each rotation, announcing your arrival 3 blocks away. When they wore out, you'd find new ones and start the symphony again. The old cemetery wasn't scary, it was peaceful. You'd walk the gravel paths reading names and dates, doing math to figure out how long people lived. Some headstones were so old the letters had worn away, leaving only shadows of lives once lived. Saturday night meant the whole family gathered around the radio for your favorite shows. The living room lights dimmed, everyone found their spot, and voices filled the air with adventures more vivid than any picture could paint. Your imagination did all the work. The milk truck arrived before dawn, bottles clinking softly as they were placed on porches throughout the neighborhood. By breakfast there were beads of condensation on thick glass, and the cream had risen to the top like a treasure waiting to be discovered. Your treehouse was built from scraps and determination. Crooked floors, drafty walls, and a roof that leaked when it rained. But it was yours. You'd hoist snacks up in a bucket, spread comics on the uneven planks, and rule your kingdom from among the leaves. The county fair arrived once a year like a traveling circus. Cotton candy spun on paper cones, carnival games that seemed rigged but were too much fun to resist, and rides that rattled and shook but never quite fell apart. Your stomach hurt from too much sugar, and you couldn't wait until next year. Hand-me-down clothes came with stories. This dress was Mom's when she was your age. These overalls survived 2 older brothers. They might not fit perfectly, but they carried love and memories in every frayed seam and faded patch. The old oak table had initials carved in its surface from decades of family dinners. Every scratch and ring told a story. Holiday meals stretched it to capacity with extra leaves and borrowed chairs, but somehow everyone always fit. The food was good, but the laughter was better. Your favorite marble had a swirl of blue that looked like a tiny planet. You'd hold it up to the light, watching colors dance inside the glass sphere. In your pocket it was smooth and warm, a small comfort that fit perfectly in your palm. The general store's wooden screen door slammed behind every customer with a sound that echoed down the street. Inside, the floors creaked, the ceiling fans turned lazy circles, and everything moved at a pace that let you actually think before you spoke. Winter mornings meant frost flowers on your bedroom window. You'd breathe on the glass to melt a small circle, peek outside at the white world, then burrow back under quilts that smelled like cedar and mothballs. School could wait 5 more minutes. The traveling salesman's sample case was a treasure chest of mysteries. Brushes, tonics, and gadgets that promised to make life easier. Mom always bought something, more out of politeness than need, and you'd examine the discarded samples like archaeological finds. Your grandfather's workshop smelled like sawdust and oil, with tools hanging in perfect order on pegboard walls. He'd let you help with simple projects, teaching you that measure twice, cut once wasn't just about wood, it was about life. His weathered hands guided yours with infinite patience. The old swimming hole was hidden behind cattails and willow trees. The water was brown and murky, but refreshingly cold on summer afternoons. You'd swing from an old tire tied to a branch, dropping into water that felt like silk against sun-warmed skin. Your favorite book was falling apart from being read so many times. The spine was cracked, pages yellowed, and some corners were dog-eared beyond recognition. But you knew every word, every picture, every feeling it brought. Some stories never get old. The corner drugstore's soda fountain served root beer floats in frozen mugs that made your hands stick to the glass. The ice cream melted slowly into the fizzy drink, creating a perfect blend of sweet and bubbly. You'd make it last as long as possible, savoring every sip. Your mother's apron had pockets full of surprises, safety pins, peppermints, tissues, and sometimes a folded dollar for being especially good. She'd untie it at the end of the day, hang it on its hook, and transform back from Mom the provider to just Mom. The old photo album had black pages and little corner tabs holding memories in place. Pictures were precious then, taken sparingly and treasured completely. Each page told a story, and you'd trace faces with your finger, connecting moments across time. Fresh tomatoes from the garden exploded with flavor that made store-bought ones taste like cardboard. You'd eat them like apples, juice running down your chin, salt crystals clinging to your lips. The smell of the green leaves stayed on your hands all afternoon. The town's one stoplight swayed in the wind, casting moving shadows on the intersection below. You knew the timing by heart, long enough to cross, short enough to make visitors nervous. It was the heartbeat of downtown, keeping everyone in rhythm. Your favorite pajamas were soft from countless washings, with patterns so faded you could barely make them out. They were too small and slightly threadbare, but they felt like a hug every night. New pajamas were practical. Old ones were perfect. The barbershop quartet practiced in Henderson's basement every Thursday night. Their harmony drifted through the open windows, mixing with cricket songs and the distant rumble of freight trains. Even if you didn't mean to listen, you'd find yourself humming along. Your secret diary had a tiny lock that wouldn't keep out anyone determined, but it made your thoughts feel important and private. You'd write in careful cursive about crushes, dreams, and plans for the future. Most of it was silly, but it was yours. The old church bell rang every hour, marking time for the whole town. You didn't need a watch. The bell told you when to head home for lunch, when to start evening chores, and when another day was ending. Time had a voice then, deep and reassuring. Summer evenings on the front porch meant fireflies and adult conversation that flowed like lazy rivers. You'd chase the blinking lights with mason jars, listening to stories and laughter that seemed to make the stars shine brighter. The air was thick with possibility. Your favorite pencil was worn down to almost nothing, but you couldn't throw it away. It had written your name 1,000 times, solved countless math problems, and doodled dreams in notebook margins. Small things could be precious when they helped you find your voice. The old train whistle echoed through town at the same times every day. 3:15 meant school was almost out. 11:30 meant lunch was waiting. The sound carried stories of distant places and reminded everyone that the world was bigger than this little corner of it. Your grandmother's quilt was pieced together from fabric scraps, each square holding a memory of a dress, an apron, or a Sunday shirt. It was heavy with more than just cotton batting. It carried love, history, and the weight of hands that had worked to keep a family warm. The general store's penny scale weighed everything from nails to candy with perfect precision. You'd watch the pointer settle, fascinated by the exact balance of give and take. Everything had its price, its weight, its place in the careful equation of small-town commerce. Fresh snow meant sledding down Miller's Hill until your clothes were soaked and your cheeks burned with cold. You'd trudge back up, drag your sled behind you, and do it all again, because winter days were short and childhood even shorter. Every ride had to count. The old radio crackled with distant voices and faraway music that seemed to travel from another world. You'd turn the dial slowly, catching fragments of songs and stories before they dissolved into static. Sometimes the best parts were the mysteries you almost heard. Your favorite spot was the hayloft where dust motes danced in afternoon sunbeams. You'd lie on your back, stare up at the rafters, and think deep thoughts about life and forever. The hay was scratchy, but the quiet was perfect. Some moments were worth the itch. These weren't simpler times, they were different times. Every scraped knee taught resilience. Every shared meal built connection. Every summer evening promised that some things would always matter: family, friendship, and the simple joy of being exactly where you belonged. The world was smaller then, but somehow it held more room for wonder.